Final Fantasy is huge. It's one of the most expansive game series in all of video games, so it's no wonder that new players stare at the list and wonder from where to pick it up. If you go to YouTube right now and type in the words, "What Final Fantasy?" one of the first results is "Should I start with?" or some variation of that phrase. And even worse is the fact that some of these videos are upwards of 30 minutes long. These types of videos explain the stories and characters of each and every mainline Final Fantasy game in length. And instead of offering a place to start, they usually tell the player to decide for themselves. You're not helping! So, where should a new player start in the series? Well, before we can answer that, there's some stuff we gotta think about first. Okay, before grabbing one of these games off the shelf and trying to immerse yourself in it, here's some thoughts. Firstly, not every player is gonna like the same thing. That's probably the biggest hurdle to overcome. With so many tastes and preferences towards things that you, the player, like, it would be nearly impossible to find one answer to all those tastes and preferences. Notice I said nearly impossible. See, every game looks and plays differently. Notice the first game on the left side and one of the newer games on the right. Totally different, but still bears the same name. So we need to find a game that bridges that gap between old and new. Got it. Secondly, are you playing for story or for gameplay? This one's easy. I'll just find a game that has a story that's easier to follow while you're learning the ins and outs of gameplay. Done. You see the pattern here. So after a whole lot of thinking and reading and watching and more thinking and more reading and more watching, Final Fantasy X. Hold on, hold it. I've got more to say and then I'll let you leave. The bell doesn't dismiss you, I do! So by switching gears and thinking about what the game offers new players, rather than the umbrella stuff like taste and preferences, we're able to now look at the game itself and analyze it. I showed some battle screens earlier in the video and there's just a bunch of numbers and words flying around and it can be difficult to keep up with, especially at first. So let me show you a battle scene from the game I chose. Okay, pause it. Yes, there are numbers and yes, there are words, but look up here really quickly in the top right corner. It's a list of sorts, and this list tells you whose turn is coming up in battle in order to make a strategy to defeat the enemy. Like you can see that the monster will attack after this character's turn. So how can you prepare for that enemy attack? Or alternatively, how can you eliminate said monster before you even get to the attack? It's all up to you. When you're not in battle, you can freely walk around and explore areas to talk to people and find hidden items and all that normal RPG stuff. Well, hold on. I'm gonna assume that you know a little bit about RPGs. And if not, well then that's gonna have to be a video I make in the future. Not quite now, but in the future. The story is rather linear and easy to progress through, but some of these maps are a little large to navigate through efficiently. I've definitely ended up on a previous screen while traversing through some of these maps and realizing it 10 minutes later. Is the game absolutely perfect? No. It's not even in my top 5 if I'm being truthful, and I adore this whole series. Well, almost this whole series. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad game by any means. Note the preferences and taste things we talked about earlier. Outside of battle is where you experience the story and make connections or play blitzball, if you like. I didn't like it, but some people adore it. Good for you! Oh snap, I didn't even talk about the characters or the story or even the soundtrack. Well, I'll leave the first two things up to you to get into. But now I will spill forth some mushy love stuff for the soundtrack. It was composed by Nobuo Uematsu, who composed the music for a good 90% of the series. And the chord structures he used in the game can really make you feel things. The lush arrangements can almost make you feel melancholy as you make your way through the world of Spira, and realize the journey ahead of you is actually one that can lead to some of the happiest moments and some of the saddest moments. And then there's this. The best part I think about choosing this particular game is if you love the story and love the gameplay mechanics of a turn-based RPG, then you can look to the earlier games and experience the beginnings of the series up to that point. But if you want something a little more action-oriented, with more politics and exposition that can honestly become a little too rich in the lore category in my personal opinion, then you can lean into the newer games. It's a perfect spot, kinda like the middle of an Oreo. And now I want Oreos. I hate to sound like all the other people who offer up no advice whatsoever in terms of which game to choose, but ultimately yes, the choice is absolutely yours to make. I'm just essentially telling you that I think this is the best point to start from, especially because it's on so many different consoles now. I mean, it's out for PS3, PS4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and even Steam now. Me personally, I'm waiting for the original Game Boy port. It wouldn't surprise me, it's everywhere. And lastly, if you haven't played the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster yet, go ahead and click on that video over there where I kinda talk about it for a second.